This movie begins with a character named Frank Vega. Frank has been through some difficult times in his life, especially as a Vietnam War veteran. One day he's just riding the bus, minding his own business, when he notices two troublemakers raising a scene. It takes him back to when he was a child, living a simple life with his parents. He grew up with a sweetheart, and they promised to marry once he returned from the war. But here's the kicker. Frank had to serve 10 years in Vietnam. When he finally returned home, he discovered that his girlfriend had married another man and had 2 children. That must have stung. Frank, heartbroken, decides to attend the police school, hoping that his military history will aid him. Unfortunately, they turned him down. He couldn't find work anyplace, so he ended up selling hot dogs for the majority of his life. That's how he made a living, by flinging dogs. Then things become worse. A beautiful new hot dog truck comes into town and snags practically all of Frank's clients. He has no choice but to become a nomad, moving around without a permanent home or work. Frank Vega has certainly had some tough breaks. Let's fast forward to the present day. The 2 troublemakers on the bus are raising a scene and attempting to injure an elderly man. But Frank jumps in and saves the old guy, punishing the troublemakers. Some passengers on the bus recorded the entire event and shared it on social media. Frank suddenly becomes well known after this heroic gesture, becomes viral on the internet. They start referring to him as badass and believe he's fantastic. People have even started designing t-shirts and graffiti with his image on them. The officers give him a trip around town. But that's not all, guys. Frank and his mother are invited to a talk show, where he becomes the center of attention. Sadly, his mother dies 3 months later, leaving him her home and pet dog. Now here's where things get interesting. Klondike Washington, Frank's friend and fellow Vietnam veteran, moves in with him and hands him a USB flash drive. This flash drive is for Frank's late mother's safe deposit box, but Frank has no idea what's on it, so he places it in the safe for safekeeping. Klondike goes out one night to get some cigarettes and runs into 2 troublemakers, Terrence and Sebastian. They want the flash drive Klondike gave Frank, but Klondike lies and says he doesn't have it. That does not sit well with those 2 bullies, and they get into a heated argument. Unfortunately, things take a tragic turn and they kill Klondike. Those guys also make hasty getaways. When Frank learns of his best friend's death, he hurries to the morgue to view Klondike's body. He's shook up and urges the authorities to investigate Klondike's murder and apprehend the perpetrators. However, the situation becomes complicated. One night, Frank's cop friend Officer Milwaukee pays him a visit. Officer Milwaukee tries to convince Frank that the police department is working hard to uncover Klondike's killer. But later, Frank checks the news and notices that the detectives have solved other crimes much faster. That bothers him, especially when he sees them playing about at the police station and doing nothing to investigate his best friend's murder. So Frank decides to solve the puzzle himself. He's had enough of the cops dragging their feet. Frank is on the case now. He starts by investigating the alley where Klondike was shot. After rummaging around, he discovers some empty bullet shells and a locket with a picture of a lady inside. Frank believes this could be a hint. He takes the bullets and the necklace to a pawn shop, where the employee informs him that the locket belongs to a convict named Terrence. The locket has a photograph of Terrence's wife. Frank has an address for this Terrence guy, so he rushes over there, but Terrence is not home. According to his wife, he has not been home in a week. Frank returns the locket to Terrence's wife and asks her where he is. Terrence's wife breaks the beans, revealing that he used to play basketball with several guys at a park. So Frank rushes to that park. When he arrives, he notices a group of guys playing basketball and approaches them to ask about Terrence. Frank approaches those young lads in the park, hoping they know where Terrence is, but instead of helping, they begin making fun of Frank. That irritates him so much that he thrashes them mercilessly. It turns out that guys were Terrence's friends. After Frank tells them to stop messing about, they break the beans and admit they have no idea where Terrence is, but they mention a guy named Ronaldo, who could know because Terrence and Ronaldo were close friends. So Frank goes over to Ronaldo's apartment and meets his roommate. This roommate informs Frank that Ronaldo is hanging out at a bar across town. Frank goes there but stumbles across some people at the pub who don't want him there. He's not having any of that, so we'll have to replace a few of them. Finally, Frank follows down Ronaldo and scares him, threatening to reveal Terrence's location. Finally, Frank learns that Terrence is seeing someone named Tanya. Now we'll meet Panther, a powerful gangster lord. He is actually the employer of Terrence and Sebastian, the two troublemakers. Panther is having a serious conversation with Major Williams, the dishonest mayor in town. The mayor is putting pressure on Panther to discover the flash disk Klondike switched so quickly. Turns out the flash drive has evidence of the mayor's filthy actions and corruption while in office. Klondike used to work for Panther, but he chose to leave and did something sneaky. He stole Major Williams' extremely vital flash disk and fled, betraying Panther. Frank is on a mission, and he gets some assistance from his neighbor, a child named Martin. They want to know what's on that flash drive. One evening, Frank pays a visit to Tanya, who works at a massage spa. He questions her about Terrence, but she isn't very helpful, so Frank decides to surreptitiously follow her home from work. Frank eventually finds Terrence after slipping into Tanya's home. He gets harsh with him to find out who ordered the hit on Klondike. Terrence, being a bit tight-lipped, refused to spill the beans, so Frank took matters into his own hands. He kind of shoved Terrence's hand onto the kitchen trash can, which pained him a little. That did the trick, and Terrence finally reveals the truth. It turns out that Klondike got himself into some serious difficulty. He came into conflict with Panther, a drug lord. See, Klondike stole the flash drive we were discussing, and it included some confidential information regarding building an oil well in the area for Major Williams. Terrence even informs Frank where he may find the Panther guy. But before heading out to fight Panther, Frank rushes home to prepare when he hears a commotion at Martin's house. Amber, Martin's mother, is having a terrible time with her abusive husband. Frank rushes in and saves her from the mess since he is the hero. Amber invites him over for lunch. Frank doesn't pass up the opportunity, so he puts on nicely and smells great. During lunch, things become quite close, and they are about to kiss when Martin Jr. walks in. Frank insists that Amber and Martin remain at his house until he repairs her front door. The next day, Frank returns the flash disk to Officer Milwaukee and hunts Panther down to his hideout. Panther became aware that Frank was on his way and instructed his squad to ambush him if he did not bring the valuable flash drive. As a result, Frank finds himself in an extremely difficult situation. Panther's crew defeats him, and he passes out. They kidnap him and begin torturing him in order to extract information regarding the location of the flash drive. They even use an electric shock device to try to force him to speak. But you know what? Frank is a stubborn man. He refuses to give up, even after he is severely injured. Panther becomes dissatisfied with Frank's silence, so he steals his wallet and discovers where he lives, hoping that the flash drive is kept there with his loved ones. Panther has his men torture Frank while he races over to his house, hoping to locate the flash drive. Frank, on the other hand, is able to free himself. He held a small match he received from Amber. Frank lights the match and tosses it at some oil drums laying around, igniting the entire area on fire and generating a massive explosion. Panther flees, but Frank won't let him get away so easily. They both swipe buses and start a chaotic chase, causing extensive damage to other vehicles along the route. They eventually wrecked both buses. Frank is not giving up. He continues to chase Panther on foot. Along the way, he meets the two troublemakers from the bus earlier. These guys, believing they can redeem themselves, attempt to shoot a video of themselves beating up Frank on their cell phones. However, Frank once again demonstrates who is in charge and pursues Panther. Panther finally arrives at Frank's house and discovers Amber there. He threatens to harm her if Frank does not hand over the flash drive, but just in time arrives to save Amber. These two start arguing, and it spills all the way out into the front yard. Amber leaps atop Panther's back as he is about to pounce on Frank again, hoping to slow him down. This provides Frank with the opportunity to finally defeat Panther. The cops ultimately apprehend Panther, and things get even more interesting when they also arrest Major Williams. See, the media expose their sleazy business. Frank, Amber, and Martin live happily ever after. The end. So the moral of the story is that sometimes all it takes to expose corruption and beat bad men is a hero in a hot dog outfit and some assistance from your neighbors.